So just 11 days to go, if my mathematics is correct, before Ireland takes to the polls again to elect or select, if you want to even call it an election, the next Irish president. And what was a three-horse race after some other runners were barred from entering the race, it's now down to a two-horse race.
Yes.
Catherine Connolly, Heather Humphries, and to give us an update and share his thoughts and musings on this event again, we have Dr. Vincent Carroll. Vincent, welcome back. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rick.
You're very welcome. Let's get straight into this here. The last time you came on, it was actually just towards the tail end of last week, but even since then, things have happened, things have developed. We're seeing more sound bites, we're seeing more airtime being given to these candidates. And I think you made an observation last time that Catherine Connolly is the bookies' favourite. Paddy Power's already paying out on her winning. And you described her in a recent video clip of yours as being evasive. And you referenced the fact that when a candidate is in the lead, they're better to just, keep your mouth shut. Yes. The only way you can go is down. And you described her as being evasive. What do you mean by evasive? What are you talking about?
Well, first of all, I mean, Catherine Connolly, let's be clear about it, is an establishment candidate, and she's misrepresenting herself as a fake socialist and as somebody who is sort of anti-establishment. But if you look at her track record, say as a barrister, for example, when she was asked a very simple question, did she do any work in which homes were confiscated from Irish people who fell foul of the banking system on mortgages and whatever? She didn't answer yes or no. She said barristers have to take whatever work comes their way. And she cited something called the cab rank rule, which indicates that you take what's next up. Now, I've been looking into that, and that's not true at all. I mean, barristers, like any other profession, can select their work. And I mean, they're encouraged not to discriminate as doctors are. You take who comes, you treat people to the best of your ability, but you still have an element of choice as to where to specialise, what to get involved in, what broad area to become involved in. So if Catherine Connolly, and we don't know what the answer is, so we must presume the worst, because if it wasn't the worst, we'd be told the best. So Therefore, I'm working on the presumption that in fact she has worked for banks confiscating Irish homes of Irish people, of people who fell foul to no fault of their own of the banking system regarding mortgages. She was asked that simple question. We didn't get a simple answer. And she was asked other simple questions as well, such as, does she support the United Kingdom's Equality Act, which defines a woman as a biological woman? And she didn't answer that question. She said she's reading it up, a bit late in the day for reading it up when there's only so many days to the presidential election. She was asked about women or men masquerading as women in women's sport. And again, we got no answer, because we never get any answers. And the answer was, well, you're dealing with small numbers of people, and she's every confidence in the various codes of sport to make up their own minds in it and whatever else. There was nothing said that gave any direction whatsoever. So, I mean, what she's fundamentally doing is trying to hoover up the middle ground, because she has the extreme ground anyway, the extreme left, the Marxist left, the Sinn Féin, the people against her before profit or whatever they are, the small fringe groups as well. She has all of those anyway. So she's now trying to hoover up the middle ground, and therefore she's not putting her foot in it by showing her true colour. So that's called evasiveness. So yes, she's an establishment candidate, she's an establishment person who has become invasive as she misrepresents herself as the fake left. She's desperate to get elected, in other words.
She's almost chomping at the bit. And I'm surprised that there hasn't been more pressure applied to her on the things that you have just referenced. So, for example, this business about the representing banks and evicting Irish tenants or Irish homeowners from their houses on behalf of multinational banks. I mean, that doesn't sit well, I'm sure, with her image of, Catherine Connolly, wants to be everything to all people. But something like that doesn't sit well in your CV when you're trying to appeal to the Sinn Féin and people before profit, or the Irish Communist Party voter base, for that matter. But as you say, she dodged the question. And no doubt, if the answer to that question had been no, I've never done anything anything like that. You must be joking. She'd have blurted it straight out. But the fact that she didn't commit to an answer says one thing. This other business about reading up on this ruling in the UK. I mean, what is there to read up on? A man is a man. A woman
It's
is a
very
woman,
straightforward.
and thus shall it ever be. I mean, what is there to read up about, or am I missing something there?
No, it's a very, very straightforward. And I read up on it. I mean, it's enormously straightforward. It's a relatively short judgment as well. And there's very many sort of professional write-ups on it also, you know. So, and she's a barrister, so like she ought to be able to read through it at top speed. So, but the only thing in her favour, in Catherine Connolly's favour, is the absence of a credible opposition. And that's the real difficulty here. I mean, there's Heather Humphries, which is also another establishment presidential candidate as well. And, you know, between both of them, the voter has very, very little choice. So my concern is that the uncommitted voter, and we're told there's 30% of them, I suspect there's far, far more than that. Some of them are going to say, well, we really are dissatisfied with the way things are going. We feel disfranchised. So never as a protest, we're going to vote for the person who claims to be a non-establishment contact as a protest. And that's my concern, that Catherine Connolly may get people's votes, people who would never normally vote for her, and people who will regret voting for her, because as soon as she's in, and therefore the gloves are off, and she can act in whichever way she wants. So my concern is that people may inadvertently be misled into voting for her. So that's why I've been pushing the third way. It's the third way now, because of course the other candidate, Gavin, has crashed out of it, and that is to have your vote recorded, but to spoil it and undermine the authority of any incoming president, so that there'll be a popular swell of opinion to invoke Article 14 of the Constitution before she is sworn in.
Wow. Who would have thought that you or me or anybody else for that matter would be pushing so hard for a spoil your vote movement to be happening in and around the 24th of October, which was the election date. And interestingly, just to rewind a second or two back into what you've just said there, I want to look at the endorsement, the bizarre endorsement now, where we have Micheál Martin appearing in front of cameras now when being asked, who are you going to vote for, Micheál, come the 24th? And he's coming out and saying, well, I'll be voting for Heather Humphries. You know, when he was propositioning and blowing the praise, blowing the trumpets for Jim Gavin not 2 or 3 weeks ago. Now he's gone. How embarrassing almost is it for him now to stand as the Taoiseach, you know, representing Fianna Fáil, saying that he's going to be voting for a Fine Gael candidate. Let's hear what he says here. This is a very quick clip, and then I want you to give me your analysis of it, because there's a lot squeezed into this 60 seconds here. So let's hear from Micheál as he smiles, he grins as he tells us who he's going to be voting for.
Because when you select your own candidate, you obviously back your own candidate. But if you try and sort of say to people, I want you now to go to a candidate that may not have been your first choice or second choice, well, people, I just know from political experience, it doesn't work, and it's not the correct approach. No, people will take their own personal positions and so on, and that's it.
Who will you vote for yourself?
Well, in terms of my own personal position, and it'll be a personal decision, you know, I'm pro-European passionately, I'm pro the European Union. I'm pro the enterprise economy, as I'm here today, in terms of food and agriculture. And I think of the two candidates, the person that is closest to those perspectives, you know, it's quite clear who that is, you know.
Catherine Connolly?
No, obviously not. You know, not at all. Yeah. Heather, obviously, would be closer to that orientation in terms of, and that is important because you know the European situation is central to Ireland's transformation of the last 50 odd years.
Wow, what a clip. He couldn't even say it when he was saying,
yeah,
well,
he couldn't even say her
is.
name. Yeah,
couldn't even say it, could he? How embarrassing is that for Micheál Martin?
But I mean, I'm amazed he's still Taoiseach. I mean, I'm amazed he's still standing there as leader of Fianna Fáil. I mean, it says very little for Fianna Fáil that he's able to actually still be there. I mean, the man has lost all credibility. It's in all respect. I mean, and I use that, it's phrased like that very sparingly. I mean, he's still there. He's a survivor, and he is still there. there. How long more he'll be there, I honestly don't know what you have to do to Fianna Fáil before they wake up enough to push him out. But it's just extraordinary. I mean, he messed up utterly, and he doesn't seem to be taking any responsibility for it whatsoever.
Notice as well that the psychological aspect of Heather Humphries' campaign was to drop her surname. So she became known as Vote Heather or visitheather.com. So it's almost like this Oprah Winfrey-esque, let's appeal to all the fluffy people in the middle ground. Let's drop the surname and we'll just call her Heather. Even he said when he was asked, will it be Catherine Connolly? No. Of course, it'll be Heather. I didn't say Heather Humphries, Heather. Yeah. I'll be voting Heather. Even the fact that the surname's been dropped, I think says a lot. And I notice as well, I've paused that right at the very end. I don't know if you probably did pick this up, but I was scribbling down as he was speaking there. At least 3 times in 60 seconds. 3 times in 60 seconds, he's banging the Europe drum. Bang, 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 banging on the drum. So he says, of course, I want to vote for someone who's pro-Europe, pro-European Union. Mm-hmm. He says he's farming, and then he goes on to say right at the end, he says, Europe has been instrumental to Ireland's transformation over the 50 odd years. Well, some people will be listening to this going, yeah, I've done okay off of the back of Ireland's transformation over the last 50 odd years. Some people have done well out of it. A lot of people hurting at the minute, though, wouldn't you say? More people are hurting off the back of it.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, people of my parents' and grandparents' generation voted for the European EEC, the European Economic Community, which was a common market. Even I remember it sort of being referred to as the common market. But now it has morphed into something completely different that inserts itself in an intrusive way into the way people lead their lives. But remember, there are jobs in the EU, and it was speculated that Micheál Martin was going to get, when Ursula von der Leyen was moving over, it was presumed to lead wasn't it NATO, I think, and there was a job vacant. Now, the man would be utterly underqualified and unsuitable for that position, of course, but he doesn't see it like that or think like that, obviously. So you keep your cards in and you promote Europe. He also said promoting farming. Now, that's a load of total nonsense with this climate stuff. I mean, Fianna Fáil MEPs voted in favour of the Nature Restoration Act, and as a bunch, if the Irish MEPs sometime last year came together and voted against, it would have sunk that particular bit of EU legislation because it got through on a knife edge. So Irish farmers could have been well represented by Fianna Fáil. They were utterly betrayed, and I don't have to even know that, because their own sort of farm leaders strike me as also bought people who row in rather than critique the policies of the EU, particularly regarding climate. But one way or the other, I mean, Heather Humphries is the other candidate, and she's equally unworthy of becoming a candidate. And I know she'll probably stick around maybe 20% of people who actually vote. It's not enough to get her over the line. Catherine Connolly knows that, so she doesn't want to make any major error. So that's why she's been completely evasive. You'll find she'll be completely sort of more or less out of sight in any significant way until the election comes, and she hopes to just walk over the line because of a lack of credible opposition. Not that Jim Gavin was either credible opposition, but we have also a lack of credible opposition in Heather Humphries. The diehard Fine Gael people will vote for her. They won't say what does she believe in or anything like that. They'll simply vote for her. But I know what she does believe in. She believes in rubber stamps. She obeyed every party whip. She obeyed every party dictate. She obeyed everything, even if it apparently went against her conscience, in as much as if she has one. I don't know. That's never been put to her. But she has rubber stamped everything, and she would be the perfect walking, talking rubber stamper if she gets into Áras an Uachtaráin.
Heather Rubber Stamper Humphries could well be in Phoenix Park. However, this is interesting too, and I want to get to this last point that I want to bring up with you today. So obviously we've been talking about spoiling your vote, and I would say a lot of uprising and opposition to the government has been like water off a duck's back to the like of Simon Harris and to the like of Micheál Martin. They haven't really paid it any attention. They dismissed it disdainfully when it comes to the protests in Dublin, when it comes to people talking about spoiling the vote, for example. But interestingly, over the weekend, Paul Murphy from People Before Profit, he took to the airwaves imploring, I would say, almost like it was as heartfelt a plea as I've seen Paul Murphy coming out with, certainly with relation to Ireland issues. He's very passionate about the Middle East. He's very passionate about Gaza. He likes to wear his tea towel, but he's not so passionate, I've found, about Irish issues. But he took to the airwaves to talk about how it's imperative that you don't spoil the vote, because you could be playing into the hands of the establishment or the government. So this is almost being repurposed. This whole thing's being repurposed as us as an anti-establishment lefties versus them, Heather and Micheál, all getting together. Jim's out of the way now, so it's us versus them. So whatever you do, don't spoil the vote, because we need you to vote for Connolly. So I want to look at what he said here, and again, I want you to give me a little reaction on what you think of Paul's words. Let's get rid of Micheál and let's get rid. Oh, got rid of you. Sorry about that. No offense. No offense, Vincent. I booted you instead of Micheál. I shouldn't have done that. So let's get rid of Micheál Martin, and let's jump from the frying pan into the proverbial fire here and hear what Paul Murphy has to say.
Vote if you want. It's up to you. But I tell you who will be delighted if you do spoil your vote. Heather Humphries will be delighted, Micheál Martin will be delighted, Simon Harris will be delighted. You're thinking about spoiling your vote because you're angry at the political establishment, and you're right to be angry. But this is a straight contest between a government candidate, Heather Humphries, and an opposition candidate, Catherine Connolly. On the one side is Heather Humphries, who is a Fine Gael minister whose fingerprints are all over the disastrous housing policies which have seen corporate landlords and private developers get rich from a crisis facing ordinary people. She was part and parcel of the attempts to dismantle, which are ongoing, dismantle what's left of our neutrality. She personally was involved in a green paper attempting to implement horrific cuts against disabled people. That's on the one side. On the other side is Catherine Connolly, a fiercely independent opposition TD who for decades has been speaking out against the disastrous housing policies of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, who for decades has been speaking up and out against Israeli apartheid and occupation against the Palestinian people, and who is a staunch defender of our neutrality and the triple lock, which helps to secure it. It's up to you, but I would recommend you use your vote, strike a blow against the government in the presidential elections.
So Paul obviously wants you to vote. He doesn't want you to spoil your vote. And in contrast to your description of Catherine Connolly, you described her as being evasive, and you explained why. Paul seems to think that she's a fiercely independent woman who is very good at speaking out against Israeli apartheid and the ongoing situation in Gaza. He just had to slip that in there, didn't he? I don't think he can't spend a day or maybe even an hour without slipping in what's going on in somewhere other than Ireland. Why is that? Why is he so obsessed?
It's very, I mean, what he did there was very carefully contrived. It's a form of acting in many ways. It's highly contrived, but it's well thought out, because he knows now that there's a real problem here. And the problem is more and more people are choosing to spoil their vote. Normally, when people protest, they choose to vote for the protest candidate. So she's trying to position Catherine Connolly as a protest candidate, whereas in effect, anybody that goes sort of after people in trouble from a bank's point of view is very much an establishment candidate. So he now realizes that that there's a wind behind people to spoil their vote, and that's only going to increase and increase and increase. So now he's on the attack, and the best way that he can mount his attack is by trying to convince people that if you spoil your vote, you're playing into the hands of guys like the last guy we saw, the Micheál Martins of this world, Simon Harris, Harrises of this world, which of course is not what you're doing at all. You are sending out a message to all establishment contacts. And in effect, Catherine Connolly's, even Paul Murphy himself is in many ways, because he's part of the system and therefore he's part of the problem. And again, sort of by deflecting the problem into other corners of the world and denying the problems in this country certainly sort of does no harm. But it just shows the establishment nature of everybody, probably with a few honourable exceptions in Dáil Éireann. But if you vote no, if you vote to spoil your vote, and that's what you're doing, you're voting to spoil your vote because your vote is being recorded. And that's what's the important thing, is to have the vote recorded. Whoever gets in, be it Connolly or be it Humphries, whoever gets in will get in on the smallest number of votes ever cast probably in the history of the state. And that utterly undermines any authority that either of those two people could possibly have. And therefore, it really, and I'm hoping, will cause a groundswell of opinion to stop the inauguration going ahead and to invoke Article 14 of the Constitution, which allows for the country to presidential functions to be carried out by a presidential commission. There is no need, there is no urgency for a president at this point. And that's what I'm trying to get across, because we have a perfectly legal mechanism called a presidential commission that can take over while this whole sorry mess is sorted out. But to summarize, let me be very clear. There are two establishment presidential candidates here, and they each in their own way are utterly and totally unsuitable. It appears Catherine Connolly is in the lead if you believe the opinion polls, but therefore it's important to examine her, to just examine what she says, and more importantly what she doesn't say. And that's important. I mean, her background, her murky background in home repossessions, and I have to presume she has done so because she's not denied so, and anybody would deny immediately if their fingers were clean on that one. Her support of free speech, her support of all transgenderism stuff, because again, she seems quite happy to have men masquerading as women, involving themselves in women's sport, with the injuries and the unfairness of the whole thing. I mean, it is ideology all the way with Catherine Connolly, rather than practicality, rather than safety and health, rather than ordinary values that people were brought up to admire and adhere to. This is she wants to remodel and recreate society in the hard left Marxist image. And people must object to that. And the way you object to that is not by voting for the other candidate, who equally is flawed, but rather spoil your vote. So I'm appealing to people, spoil your vote by having it recorded and spoil it on the day.
Interesting. Also, two other things I'll throw in there, in addition to the list of reasons why you should be highly skeptical, at the very least, about Catherine Connolly, is there was another wouldn't know if it's a scandal or not, but there was something came to light about her employing someone with a gun conviction, a firearms conviction, who was against the Good Friday Agreement. She thought, no, she's been to prison, she's been rehabilitated. She spun it round to say, well, no, all the procedures were followed. I just wanted to give this girl another chance. I believe in her. It's all about rehabilitation. But I believe she was signing her in and out of the Dáil at the time, and vetting questions were being asked, someone with a firearms offence being in the Dáil. She was asked another question a few days ago, whether she would consider employing a convicted rapist, for example, to which she answered, well, I would have to think about that one. I would have to think about that one, reverting back to the evasiveness that you talk about. Yeah. And I suppose, lastly here, I'll throw this to you as well. They say a week is a long time in politics. That's a very long established saying. I would say a week is certainly a very long time in politics, but even a day or two, it appears, can be a very long time as well. And could it be, Vincent, that we've still got 11 days to go? 11 days to go. And whilst Paddy Power have positioned this, that Catherine's going to make it, the fact that Connolly has made that video in light of ongoing revelations about Connolly, is it fair to say that even within the space of this week, before we get to the weekend, there could be more things bubbling up from below the surface of the proverbial cesspit? concerning Catherine Connolly that are maybe causing people to fret a little bit behind closed doors?
We might be going into an election with only one person standing, and that person might be Heather Humphries. Because when you think of it this way, I mean, Gavin resigned for a particular reason, particular things in his past, particular things that were happening in his life that were going to come out. Catherine Connolly was asked, as you said, would she employ a convicted rapist? And she had to think about it yet again. She had to think about equality legislation. Now she has to think about this. You know what? Most people wouldn't have to think about this. Most people would have it as a major red flag, as a major no-no. And that sentence alone ought to be a disqualifier. In the same way how Gavin behaved, that was a disqualifier. I mean, he could have toughed it out. Even though he would have lost the support of Fianna Fáil, but he could have toughed it out. And his name is still on the ballot paper, and he could have said, on mature reflection, I'm going to have a run at it anyway. But he has had the decency so far to not to have done that. Now, Catherine Connolly has not had that decency. What she said about thinking about it, rather about employing a convicted rapist, can you imagine that? I mean, what other country in Europe would allow anybody to go forth for a position of authority and responsibility, let alone to become the very first person in the state, the most, if you like, the person that the state unites behind. And that person, when asked a question about employing a convicted rapist, had to think about it. I will say very plainly, and any woman's organization should say very plainly, that is a resigning matter. That person is not fit for office. Catherine Connolly should not go up for office. She should have the decency now to withdraw. She made a mistake. We can all make mistakes, but you know what? That's a very, very big mistake. And I've no hesitation in saying that's absolutely, without a shadow of doubt, a resigning issue. I'm calling on Catherine Connolly to resign.
Amen. Well, I'll call for her to resign too, whether or not she'll actually hear us or not. Maybe, you never know. She might actually be watching these little clips that we put up, because they do have a little bit of reach on the
Her people
Emerald
will
Isle.
be. Her people will be, yeah.
Her people will be, no doubt. There'll definitely be some people who will be, how would you say, assigned maybe to hear what you have to say, to hear what I have to say. We're just little fish in the big pond, but still we can make a ripple or two here and there. We can send a few bubbles up to the surface of good rather than of evil and malignancy here, which is all we're trying to do here this morning. And I want to draw this to a close. It was just an update on what's been happening over the weekend based on what you said. And of course, 11 days. I mean, it's, I don't want to say, it's a little bit exciting at the minute. It's exciting for all the wrong reasons. I mean, it's what's going to crawl out from under the rock next, or what's going to come out from the woodwork next. And is this going to go ahead? And will it be scrapped, or will there be a redrawing calling on Article 14 of the Constitution? Who knows? But I'll tell you what, it's going to be one thing it's not going to be. It's dull between now and the 24th of
And it's
October.
so unedifying. It's so unedifying and disrespectful of the citizenry of this country, and it's humiliating from a European perspective. The eyes of Europe are on us, and look what they're seeing. This is not the Ireland I know, grew up in, and the Ireland that I love.
Yeah, it's a client. It was, without a doubt, it's turned into just a complete and utter farce. It was a sham to begin with. It's just complete. But I don't know what the next level below farcical is. I'll maybe get my thesaurus out and have a look at that. But whatever's below or above farcical, that's what the level we're at
the rock bottom, the very bottom, isn't it? Yeah.
We're not just scraping the bottom. We've actually went underneath the barrel, and we've scraped the outside of the under the barrel, not just at the very bottom at the minute. But like I said, 11 days still to go. Let's see what happens. But for now, anyway, big thanks to you for hopping on at very short notice here this morning, just to give your thoughts and opinions, your musings, and your observations on this. Dr. Vincent Carroll. Link will be in the description box underneath. You have a small Telegram channel. It deserves to grow bigger. So listeners, if you're listening to this video, go into the description box, click the link through to Vincent's Telegram page, and just join the channel, and let's try and get his videos a little bit more traction, because I believe they deserve it. So Vincent, thank you very much again for hopping on. That's Dr. Vincent Carroll. I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media. And for now, I am over and out.
My pleasure.